Is Damonic Williams the top target for Oregon in the transfer portal right now? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lots to get to. Dana Altman got somebody. Stick around for that later in the show because it is a good, very, very good somebody in the transfer portal. But we start with football transfer portal news, or kind of a lack of news right now. So Damonic Williams is the transfer defensive lineman from TCU. And I have not been able to confirm whether Oregon has scheduled a visit with Damonic Williams at this time, but that's something they have to be able to do. So Williams is the transfer defensive tackle from TCU. I mentioned him on last week's show as someone that would be on my wish list for the transfer portal because he's a veteran, he's productive, he was a freshman All-American, an All-Big 12 performer in his last two seasons, not in that order. The freshman was 2022, and you get the idea. So he's a guy that would bring a sure thing, something that you know, to the defensive line. And I think that mixed in with all the young guys could be a really, really beneficial situation. Of course, Oregon has already brought in Houston defensive tackle Jamari Caldwell to start on the interior. But that other defensive tackle starting spot, I think, is up for grabs. Maybe it's Ben Roberts or Keon Ware-Hudson. Maybe it's Amari Washington or Terrence Green or Johnny Bowens or Aiden Breland or any number of young guys in there. But Oregon has reportedly made contact or shown interest in Damonic Williams, and I think that there is a reason. Doesn't mean they don't like the young guys or think that their potential is immense. I mean, they recruited him to Oregon for a reason. They didn't recruit him to sit on the bench. They recruited him to play. But Williams is a guy who's proven production you can't match. Oregon does not have anyone who you can guarantee can be as productive at the Power 4 level as Damonic Williams is. Now, the tricky part here is you got to get him on campus for a visit. Brian Smith, our Locked On recruiting insider, who I should be able to get on the show again later this week. So if you have any recruiting questions, let me know in the YouTube comments or drop me a note on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @SMcLaughlinCFB. But I think that for Oregon, you got to be able to get a visit, right? You're not going to get a guy to commit if you don't get a visit, and certainly Oregon does visits as well as anybody, as Brian also is fond of mentioning, because, well, he's right. Oregon does them very well, but there's a deep lineup here, and this is why I asked the question, is getting Damonic Williams possible? Is this a realistic option? Of course it's possible. I can't ever rule out Tosh Lupoy and Dan Lanning recruiting a defensive lineman, whether it's a high school, the portal ranks, a veteran, or a newcomer, talented, under the radar, whoever. Like they have shown a propensity to recruit that position at the highest level. So this is the lineup of teams that Oregon is going to be competing with here for a guy who, again, has played the last couple of seasons at TCU. Oklahoma last weekend, he was there for their spring game. In the middle of this week, he's going to take a visit to Texas. He's going to Colorado this weekend. Now, that's the unfortunate part. That is the unfortunate part because Oregon spring game is on Saturday. And if you're trying to bring someone in for a visit, that would be the premier opportunity to bring a guy on campus for a visit, but he's going to Colorado this weekend instead. Next week, he's going to LSU. And the last that we've heard is that it's to be announced on whether he'll get a visit to Oregon and Missouri. Both the Ducks and Tigers are trying to get an on-campus visit there. Now, you may be wondering why this guy is worthy of this sort of attention, right? Why is he the first segment on my show today? Well, because it's one of the needs that I've highlighted as an area where Oregon can go if they want to, if they see someone that can be an upgrade over what they have on the roster. And here's our Locked On TCU host, Steven Simcox, talking about what Damonic Williams brings to the table.
TCU defensive tackle Damonic Williams is in the transfer portal. I'm Steven Simcox, host of Locked On Horned Frogs. Dominic Williams is a big-time impact player. He's a 3-star recruit out of high school. He's originally from California. He was one of the first commitments that Sonny Dykes got when he moved over from SMU and took the job at TCU, and he's been a massive part of the TCU defense for the past 2 seasons. Really good size for your prototypical interior defensive lineman, 6'2", 320 pounds. He's made every start. He started as a true freshman, game 1 against Colorado in the season opener. He was in the middle for the Frogs, and he had been in the middle of that defense ever since. Very good at stopping the run, great at the point of attack. He was a freshman All-American in 2022. Last season, he was an all-conference player. From a numbers perspective, he had 3 sacks in 2023, a sack and a half in 2022, 33 total tackles in 2023, and 27 in 2022. But what Dominic does so well is he takes on double teams. He allows linebackers and other players to flow the ball. He's a big interior presence that can also pressure the quarterback and make an impact. I think he's been the best player on the TCU defense for the past 2 seasons.
That's the sort of guy that if he's available, you just go get him. No questions asked, no matter who's on the roster or who could, make an impact relative to last year. So that's why Dominic Williams is a target for Oregon, but they've got to get a visit. If they don't get a visit, then they won't be able to land him, because he's already seen, some other big time programs, and he's, already been in the state of Texas for the last couple of years. So certainly you'd think that Texas and Oklahoma might have a little bit of a leg up right there. So that's transfer target number 1. Transfer target number 2 for Dan Lanning and company is Jacoby Mathews, who might have been, when he first went into the transfer portal, the number 1 guy that Oregon was after, might still be the number 1 guy that Oregon is after. But I bring him up on today's show to say that there has been an eerily quiet amount of news on the Jacoby Mathews front. So the initial reports, who is a former 5-star safety from Texas A&M, he's played for the last couple of seasons over with the Aggies. He goes into the transfer portal, and right off the bat, the top 2 teams are reportedly Oregon and Florida State. But then there were rumblings that maybe Colorado, Ohio State, USC were going to be involved with them. USC just added a nickel corner from Florida State, and I don't anticipate they would need any more help in the secondary. I mean, Mathews is a really, really talented player who's played well for Texas A&M's defense amidst some tough times in College Station over the last couple of years. But there has not been any news, any buzz, anything on Mathews in the last couple of days. And it just kind of got me thinking, I'm going a little tinfoil hat here, but I wonder if Oregon is waiting to announce that at the spring game. I'm just saying. There were shows or podcasts that I think On3 was putting out that were talking about how the need for Florida State in the transfer portal wasn't quite as great at the safety position or in the secondary as it is at Oregon, and that Oregon was kind of seen as the leader once upon a time. Don't know if that's still the case. Don't know that anybody knows if that's still the case. But Oregon has been in a good position with Jacoby Mathews since he entered the transfer portal, and there hasn't been any indication one way or the other that position is necessarily wavered. And so as Oregon moves closer to the spring game, that's when you're getting the most attention on the football program in the spring. That's your big day. That's your moment where you're showcasing what the team looks like to your fans. You're showing it to a broadcast as well. If you go into a day like that and you can make an announcement of, hey, we're getting former 5-star safety Jacoby Mathews here, that would help, foster the momentum. And it's all about momentum, right? As Josh Lyman said in the West Wing, you want momentum, baby. Got the big mo. If you know, you know. And I hope at least some of you know, because that's my favorite television show of all time. Drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments or your questions as well. Some of you have submitted questions, and guess what? We're going to answer those on today's show, as we always do. Something else we do here on the show quite often, talk about Game Time and why it's great. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. The prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Not up, down. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60%, which I think is more than half. I'm pretty sure. Might have to double check. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Whatever you want, Game Time's got it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This episode also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. That's America's number one sportsbook. It's playoff time in the NBA. Playoff time in the NHL. Major League Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 whether you win or lose. You don't have to be right on your first bet. $150 guaranteed. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So, what are you waiting for? Seriously, what are you waiting for? Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. You don't get a lot of those in the sports world, but you get an automatic win over at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. All right, we got questions to answer. We have got questions to answer. YouTube comments, you can shoot me a note on X, @McLaughlin CFB or Locked On Ducks. Those be the handles. DMs and mentions are always wide open. If you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, including my immediate thoughts to breaking news with the Ducks, go join the flock over at Subtext, link in the description below wherever you listen to or watch this show. Question came in from over there, goes something like this. Hey Spencer, hope you're having a great day. You too. You too. That's very nice. I have a question for the pod. I have an answer. What are your thoughts on the new college football rules approved for the new upcoming season? I'm not a fan of the 2-minute warning edition, but like teams finally adding the in-helmet communication. I never understood why it wasn't a thing in the first place. Let's start where we agree, sort of. Well, we sort of disagree on the other point, but outright agreement, helmet communication should absolutely be there. Everything that went down with Michigan and the sign stealing, and they were saying, hey, we're not the only ones doing this, which, let's be real, they're probably not. They're probably not. And they were clearly doing it worse than anybody else, which is why Jim Harbaugh was suspended a few times. But the in-helmet communication, yeah, that is an absolute no-brainer. And for Oregon, Dylan Gabriel will have that, of course, as the quarterback. And on defense, probably going to be Jeffrey Bassa. I've heard a couple different coaches in pressers or on Odds and Audibles talking about how Jeffrey Bassa is the guy that is probably going to have, what they kind of call the green dot, which is the helmet that's got the microphone in it. And yeah, I think that just makes all the sense in the world. Don't know why they couldn't do it before. You can have tablets on the sidelines to look at plays. Don't know why you couldn't do that before. So definitely on board with that. As for the 2-minute warning, I think it's an interesting but different conversation, because the reason that they are instituting a 2-minute warning like they have in the NFL, which is end of the second quarter and end of the fourth quarter, is because like the NFL, they are no longer stopping the clock after every first down. I believe they are going to do that inside of 2 minutes of both halves, but that's why the 2-minute warning is necessary. So here's where I come down. I did not want the clock to run after first downs, but if the clock is going to do that, then guess what? I'd like to have the 2-minute warning. So there's at least some other stoppage, to give it a rhythm and flow that we're all comfortable and familiar with. Frankly, if you think about it, the 2-minute warning is kind of weird. Like, why is there a 2-minute warning? I don't know. You don't have one in basketball. You don't do anything like that in baseball. You don't have anything like that in soccer. They have extra time, but that's after you play the full 90 minutes. Like, I don't know what the original thinking was behind the 2-minute warning, personally. But I think that having it there so that the game is not just going by as quickly as possible, I think actually works. And it makes Joel Klatt had a really good explanation a while ago on his show about why it makes the TV timeouts flow a heck of a lot better, actually, because of the way it works. Like, I think some fans were writing into his mailbag and saying, hey, doesn't this just give another opportunity for commercials to come in? Like, no, actually, it makes it flow a lot better because those commercials are going to get played no matter what, and you're either having a stoppage that, gives your team an opportunity to make something happen before the end of the half, or it's not. So I think that is all good and fine, but I just want to take a step back and go to what our old friend Chip Kelly said, which was, well, I hope you guys are selling a lot of commercials. We only had the ball 3 times in that first half. He said that going into the halftime locker room. I think it was this past season when they were playing a home game. And that's because it changes things so dramatically on the field. I think from a viewing standpoint, it's rough. I think from a viewing standpoint, it's rough. I think on the field, it changes things pretty dramatically. I think it changes it even more for the consumer, for you and me, people watching the games on TV. There are a noticeable, there's a noticeably greater number of commercials. English is hard than there have been in the past. And college football games have always been long. Never felt like they needed to get shorter. I'm a fan of a lot of the moves that Major League Baseball has made in recent years to speed up the pace of play, because I thought sometimes the games would go too long. And when you get to extra innings, wrap that baby up. Let's go. No one wants to watch a 16 to 18 inning game. They just don't. Not in the regular season. In the playoffs, that's one thing, but I think in the regular season, let's move it along a little bit. So, like I have the same sort of thinking in golf. Like a standard round of golf, if you just go to a public course, if they say the pace of play that they want you to play, it'll be like 4.5 hours. I'm like, a round of golf doesn't need to take over 3 hours and 30 minutes. It doesn't. It really doesn't. If you have a foursome, maybe 4 hours. But even then, it doesn't need to take that long. I can play in a foursome with my brother, who is a round of bogey golfer, my dad, who's a little bit better than that, another friend of mine who is a beginning player, and we can play in less than 4 hours. No problem. If there's nobody in front of us. So I want to enjoy things. I think that there are some sports that need a better rhythm and pace to them. I never thought college football was like that. I thought it was one of the things that really separated it from the NFL was the clock stopping after the first downs. And it didn't change my viewership of the actual on-field products as much as I thought it would. But it definitely changed the commercial element because they put more in, and I think that that's worse. So that was a long-winded explanation of answering that particular question, but such is the nature here on the show. All right, couple questions here from Bud, who sent them in via subtext, which means, like the previous question asker, he gets priority. The details of NIL deals seem like a mystery. To you and me both. Does it vary from school to school or athlete to athlete regarding frequency of payments, performance bonuses, and retention rewards and other criteria? Yeah, so this is why the NCAA needs to rein in NIL and make it a more official part of a university so that there can be more continuity in these matters. Because you're right, it doesn't seem clear. You know why? Because it's not clear. The NCAA, this is 100% true. You can look it up. Tried to sue or fine or whatever Tennessee for violating NIL rules that weren't in place when the violation, quote unquote, happened, but did exist previously, but were removed. And they tried to say Tennessee committed this rule and that was illegal 3 years ago. And so that's not okay. And you're in violation of that. Yeah, they got housed. The NCAA did. The NCAA got housed in court there. Big surprise. So these collectives are not affiliated with the university. They're not regulated. They're just there. They're affiliated with the school because they're helping players get to the school. They're not actually directly licensed by the school per se. And that leads to a lot of shady actors behind the scenes, people getting in kids' ears, payments not getting made, or amounts being promised that don't get fulfilled. All of that is, it has not been a concern to my knowledge for Oregon because Division Street is one of the best NIL collectives in all of college football. But with regards to the things you mentioned, frequency of payments, performance bonuses, all and retention awards and all that sort of stuff, depends on the collective, depends on the contract. They can write it however they want. They are their own entity. And it's not like Dan Lanning is signing off on like, oh yeah, no, give him this amount and do this and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure he's involved. I'm sure he's aware of what they're able to offer through Division Street, but To say that all that stuff is structured, no, it is not. That's part of the problem, at least in some people's view, including mine. Last one from Bud, and then we have some exciting news to get to. With the expansion of the Big Ten next season, will the 4 teams out west have a greater or lesser home field advantage than the current Big Ten teams due to travel and the change in time zones? I don't think there's an advantage one way or the other. Long travel is long travel. Playing in a place you haven't played before is playing in a place you haven't played before. For Oregon, that might be playing in the snow. When was the last time Oregon played in the snow? There's a fun trivia for the YouTube comments and all the internet sleuths out there. I'm sure people will be able to find it. You guys can find amazing, amazing stuff. When was the last time Oregon played a game in the snow? I'm trying to think. Maybe a Civil War sometime. I don't know. But when they go to Wisconsin in November, might be snowing. That's different. But guess what? Teams that are in, Maryland is coming to Autzen Stadium this year. Maryland or Rutgers, one of the two. Might be both. I forget. They've never done that before. They're going all the way across the country. Like, there are challenges and new elements that this Big Ten, which is 18 teams, whatever, there are challenges that it presents. It's the same for everybody. It's the same for everybody. I don't think because there's a weather concern going into the Big Ten over there, but do they know what it's like to go out west or have more extensive travel? Like it's all just kind of a wash. Like it's a good question. So it's completely reasonable question to ask. But no, I don't think there's an advantage or disadvantage one way or the other. So I'm so excited to tell you what's coming next. I'm also excited to tell you about Monopoly Go. I'm a competitive person, or at least that's what I've been told. I definitely have a competitive side, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times, including on this smartphone right here that I have in my possession. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with friends, because you can charge them rent on iconic properties just like in classic Monopoly, but now you can also heist their vaults of riches for yourself. And leaderboards show you who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. It's not just your competitive side that'll love it though. You can team up with friends, have a more collaborative approach, and earn huge rewards playing against the world and around the world in timed tournaments. So get the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Absolutely stoked for this one. Oregon has finally announced their first transfer portal edition. We'll see if more arrive. I'd expect there to be more on the way, but Brandon Angel is the first transfer that Dana Altman Company have landed. He's in the transfer portal cycle. He's a fifth year coming from Stanford. He spent the last 4 seasons with the Cardinal. 6'8", 210 pounds, tremendous positional versatility. I think this guy can play all over the floor. I'd be shocked if he comes in and doesn't start. And he just had a heck of a year with the Cardinals. So, averaged a career best 13 points per game, shot almost 45% from beyond the arc. Now, that sounds great, and it is great, because I am here for a guy that shoots in the mid-40s from 3. He only took about 2.5 a game. It's really not something that he has as a focal point. It's a feature. It's not the feature. Right? It's a complementary component. It's not what he is there on the floor to do. So I was doing some digging on Brandon Angel, and this past year at Stanford, 68% of his points came at the rim, and only 13% of his shot attempts came from three-point land. Now, he hit them at an efficient clip. So this is a guy that scores down low and can score from outside. And when you watch the highlight reel of kind of what he did this past year with the Cardinal, which was the first time he averaged double-digit points per game. He was a 9-point-a-game scorer the season prior, and he was a 36% three-point shooter, up that to a career best 44.7% this past year. Love to see that sort of progression, but this is a guy who wants to get downhill. And frankly, when I look at him, I see what KJ Evans can kind of become, but I think with Angel, he's someone that can play all over the court. Now, Evans can do that as well. And if Oregon has a 3-man big rotation of Angel, Evans, and Nate Biddle, boy, I think you're in a good spot there. And if Mookie Cook is healthy and Bam Tracy is, of course, coming back from this past season, that could be your starting five. I'm not saying Oregon's necessarily done in the transfer portal, because there are certainly other avenues that they can explore. This doesn't have to be the only move they make. I'd be a little surprised, frankly, if it is the only move they make. Cliff Amori, who is the Rutgers big man that I talked about recently on the show, guy's an efficient scorer, great shot blocker, good low post presence, good rebounder. He is not, it appears, close. He's set several visits. I don't know that he's close to making a commitment at this point in time or choosing a home, but Oregon has reportedly made contact with him at the very least, and certainly they'd love to get him on campus for a visit, as I was talking about earlier with Damonic Williams, the defensive line transfer from TCU. But this is a great move. Like this move, getting Brandon Angel, is the sort of move that excites me and should excite all Oregon basketball fans out there and Oregon fans thinking about buying into next year's basketball team, because I think you're going to see a year 1 to year 2 jump from Jackson Shellstead, who had a great true freshman campaign. You got to solidify the front court, and this is a big move certainly to do that. And you bring in a guy who is a fifth-year senior, has played a lot of basketball, has started all but 3 games, I think, over the last couple of seasons. He started all but 1 this past year with Stanford, and that's the sort of guy that you bring in because you are aware, hey, we can put together a tournament team. We can try to make a run here, and that's where Oregon's headspace should be. And I love this move. I absolutely love this move. I don't know immediately, if I'm being honest with you, what exactly the rotations could look like. But the amount of size and versatility Oregon is suddenly putting together here, adding a guy like Angel to the mix, I think is just utterly fantastic. Because Bam Tracy is about 6'5". Mookie Cook is 6'5", 6'6", in that sort of range. And then you've got Shellstad at the point, and he's not the biggest guy, but he's your point guard. He can be smaller. Keyshawn Barthélemy comes off the bench. He's a little smaller. But you've got KJ Evans, who's 6'8", 6'9". You've now got Angel at 6'8", and you've got Nate Biddle, who's a 7-footer. If Biddle is your starting 5, which has great upside, but a little bit of risk given his injury history, you could absolutely start Shellstad, Tracy, Angel, Evans, Biddle. That could be your starting 5. And I got to tell you, that's a big athletic group. Now, is that guaranteed to be the starting 5? No, I don't automatically think that. But there were some big time names that were going after Angel here, and Oregon being able to land him, I think is such a great sign. And it's a testament to what I talked about when the season ended, unfortunately, in the round of 32 against Creighton, which is, hey, season was a win. Season was a win because it looked like it was going to be a 3rd straight trip to the NIT, and then they made a run. Made a surge, got to the NCAA tournament. And I don't know if you pick up Brandon Angel if you don't put your program on the map like that. If you don't demonstrate, hey, I'm Dana Altman, and I still got it. And, Altman's coached against this guy for the last 4 seasons of the Pac-12 and knows what he's capable of. But, when I watch the way that he scores, he's a guy who you can give the ball to in an ISO situation. He is great off a catch and shoot to put up a 3. But he's not a tremendous athlete. Like Evans is a much more athletic guy. But I think right now Angel is the more skilled guy and the more crafty guy down in the low post area. His footwork and flurry of moves, really, really good. And he's someone who wants to back down smaller players from the mid to high post. He's got really, really nice touch around the rim. Doesn't show a ton of mid-range game on his highlight reel, but I like where he's at. I like where his game is at and what he brings to the table. And I think it presents options. That's what this is bringing Dana Altman. You have got options. And I think the only move that is left at this point is to go and see if you can find a starting center and have Nate Biddle be your backup big. Because if your 4 bigs are say Cliff Amori from Rutgers with Brandon Angel, and then you've got KJ Evans, Nate Biddle. That's your front court, and that's a really good front court. So my NCAA tournament expectations, they are high in terms of what I expect in terms of making the tournament. Is what I'm trying to say. Not quite sure. Got to see the full team before I can say, is this a Final Four team? Is this an Elite Eight team? Like, what are they gonna be able to do? But you add a guy like this, you should be in the NCAA tournament, and it should not have to come down to winning the Big Ten tournament either. On that note, speaking of Oregon basketball, Oregon's getting a new court. They have scrapped the Into the Woods design. It is going to be changed. Question here from Bud, who gets a trio of questions on today's show. Perks of being active in the mailbag. In terms of design, how would you like the new floor at Matt Court to look? Well, remember, Matt Court, Matthew Knight Arena, technically would be the way to refer to it there. I suspect it will be uniquely Oregon, but I hope it will be more universally embraced than the initial design. Yeah, I mean, I liked the concept. I didn't hate the court as much as everybody else. I understand why for some it was tough to look at. I think because they were so, far be it from me to be an artsy guy. I'm definitely not. I think you put an O at center court, and other than that, I think you keep it pretty straightforward. That I feel like after, all the backlash in the years of people bashing on the court and there's too much going on and everything, I wouldn't be surprised if it's incredibly simple. Put either an O or the Fighting Ducks logo at center court. I think that would look pretty sick. Put one of those things there and say, all right, everything else just basketball lines. I could see them going in that direction, but I'm more than a little intrigued to see what the new court looks like, just like I'm more than a little intrigued to see what move they could make next. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.